Well, it's a great pleasure for me to have an opportunity of making a few opening remarks at this 5th International Forum. I'm very glad to be back in this great city of Liverpool, and also to come to the University of Liverpool, which I understand is at the very forefront of the academic institutions that are concerned with the online world, if I may call it that. I believe one can now get a master's degree online, which is a remarkable development. Now, what I want to do is to, as briefly as I can, set this matter in context, explain why I myself am so interested in what is happening, and thirdly, to try to say a few words about how I think the future may lie in this field. Now, one of the problems faced by all countries that have developed legal systems is to deal with 4 particular problems, as I would underline them. First is the question of complexity, that all legal systems develop complicated procedural codes, and anyone who studies procedural codes of any sort in any country will be struck by the fact that every year they seem to get longer. Lord North's great reforms, of course, cut a lot of the old stuff away, but I think it's beginning to grow up again, and it's one of the difficulties. The second problem faced by any court system is the problem of time. And I got an article quite recently from New Delhi, last week in fact, an article about arbitration in India. And that had the horrifying statistic that there are over 650,000 disputes in the 21 high courts in India, which have been pending for over 10 years. So time, I don't say we're as bad as that, but time is a factor. The third great problem is the problem of cost, because however simple a case may be, if you put it through the elaborate system of a court process, it is bound to involve skilled people spending time preparing the case, apart from the questions of court fees and so on, which have now become quite a major concern, certainly in the High Court. And the last problem is the question of distance. England and Wales and Scotland, and the jurisdiction which I know best, are fairly small countries, and we look at them and compare with a great many other countries. But even so, the question of getting people together in one place where they can all have a case heard in one court is quite a major thing. And with present travelling costs, if we're not going by air, as we've heard some cheaper flights, it is a very major problem. And that is, those 4 problems are ones which make one think, well now, is there another way of dealing with this? Now, when I was sitting as a judge, I was often concerned with these problems of how much time was being involved in cases. And for a while I served as the chairman of the Supreme Court Procedure Committee. But I first became interested in information technology, really, rather over 30 years ago, when I went to the Atomic Energy Research Establishment at Harwell, near Oxford, or just south of Oxford, and saw a pilot study that was then being carried out into putting the Northern Ireland statutes on computer database. It was only an experimental system. But when I saw this and saw how it was going along, and this is from the early 70s, I realized at once, really, I don't claim any particular cleverness about this, but I realized at once that this might have tremendous importance for the law, because it seemed to be a system which could collect, store, and then disseminate vast quantities of data in a manner which no other system could possibly equal. Now, it took some time before that really took off. But of course now one has seen the amazing developments that have taken place, certainly particularly in the last 10 years. It was hard to get people very excited about to begin with, but it did develop in time. And as you've heard, I became the second president after Lord Scullman of the Society of Computers and Law. And then when we set up the Information Technology and the Courts Committee in 1985, I was invited to be chairman of that. So it's something which I, with very scant technical knowledge, nevertheless I have been extremely interested in. Now that is one thing in IT, but at the same time in the last 30 years I've seen another development which is important, because I think this coming largely from the United States, Australia and Canada, and as a result of a good deal of academic work in the United States, the idea of trying to solve disputes otherwise than by court process has become increasingly important. Of course, methods of dealing with this centuries-old problem of legal procedure has been looked at when arbitration was introduced, I think probably in the 16th, 17th century. Then you have some forms of mediation and conciliation for a long time, and certainly quite developed in the end of the 19th century. But it's really in the last 20, 30 years that mediation as a discipline has really caught a great many people's imagination. And since I retired as a judge 10 years ago, I have tried to help as far as I can with the development of mediation, and we set up about 5 years ago the Civil Mediation Council, which tries to bring together all the providers of mediation. Now that is my background, and I don't refer to that simply as any showing any special degree of prescience, if I would say so, but simply to show why I am so keenly interested in what we're going to talk about and how I'm keen to learn from what later speakers are going to be able to tell us. Now, we are at a very exciting stage, as I see it, here at the beginning of the 21st century, on how we are going to deal with a more efficient means of dealing with legal disputes. Now, some of you may be able to think of other ways in which ODR can be explored and used. I have certainly thought of 5 ways it can be done, and I'll just mention them because you may be able to think of others. And some of them, I think, may already, of course, be being employed. And in the first seminar, first seminar room, the other side of the hall, there are already some exhibits set up. And I think at lunchtime people will have an opportunity, or even at coffee time, to go to see them. And there are some well-known names in there, people who are active in this field. Now, the first way we're obviously going to be able to do is to use online technique for the purpose of ordinary negotiations. At the moment, negotiations very often take place either by endless letters or by telephone calls. But the great advantage of online thing is the possibility of speed and the fact that you can, by means of attachments and so on, both send and exchange large quantities of documents. You can amend them at extraordinary speed and so on. And everybody who involved in negotiation nowadays probably make use of that technique. The next way one can deal with it is as an adjunct, that is technology, as an adjunct of mediation or conciliation, or indeed of arbitration for that matter. And I know that many experienced mediators would say, well, one of the great things about mediation is that you have got the physical presence of the skilled mediator to help things along, and that's absolutely true. But there are cases where either the sum involved or the distances involved are such that one wants to explore the possibility of using information technology as a method of mediating without everybody assembling together in one room or one building. And I think that is something which you've got to look at, particularly now, as some of the Graham said earlier, you have got a contracting world, really, where people are dealing much more than they did with across countries and across continents. The third thing is, of course, for a system which I think is sometimes called blind bidding. That's a form of sort of automatic negotiation. And I think you'll be able to see in the seminar room some of the people who are involved in that. people like Smart Settle and Cyber Settle. And I had the opportunity a day or two ago of seeing the software that is used by Cyber Settle. And it's very impressive how, in fact, by this crime-bidding process, you can, particularly useful in small disputes, but it may in time get used in much larger things, you can, in fact, reduce the amount of time that is involved in settling claims in the £5,000 to £10,000 or that sort of amount. And, of course, particularly valuable when you're dealing with road traffic accidents where you've got fixed costs and where the sums involved simply are not likely to merit a very large and lengthy process. So that's another method, another application. The next one is possibly, and this is one I'm not sure how far is yet being used, where you might use it in the process of what is called in ADR terms early neutral evaluation. You send papers to somebody to make an early appraisal. Now, E&E has not really been taken off as a form of ADR, but it seems to be it has a scope at some stage in the future. And the last, and obviously the most obvious method or reason for using online dispute resolution is when you're dealing with e-commerce itself. Now, it's been pointed out, and here I quote, it's been said that the jurisdictional difficulties associated with pursuing an action through traditional court systems for disputes arising online means that ODR is likely to become the predominant method of solving such disputes. And that really speaks for itself, because if you have an online dispute about an online trade or eBay or whatever it is, you are immediately faced, well, if we do have a dispute, how are we going to deal with it? And various people are obviously keenly interested in this, and I think a lot of work is going on in this field to see how we can do with it. Well, I've said enough. It's a fascinating subject, online dispute resolution, and I do congratulate all those who have organized this forum. Some of you may have been in Geneva. The first two, I think, of these forums were in Geneva. The next one was in Melbourne, and then last March, the fourth one was in Cairo, as I understand it, March of 2006. And here we are in Liverpool, which is a very splendid centre to have. And the next one, I believe, is going to be at the end of this year in Hong Kong, the next forum. So it's a developing subject, and I do congratulate everybody who's connected with it, and I do wish it well as a topic, and anything I can ever do to assist its development, I will try to do so. Thank you very much for asking me.